In the powder keg that was occupied Boston, tensions simmered like a cauldron on the boil. The city, once a bustling hub of colonial trade, had become an armed camp. 6,500 British regulars trapped within its narrow confines, encircled by a ragtag force of 15,000 American militia. General Thomas Gage, the iron-fisted commander, had imposed martial law, his troops enforcing a siege mentality against what he saw as rebellious upstarts. This was the aftermath of the powder alarm, where rumours of British seizures had ignited a culture of defiance, arming farmers and tradesmen into a makeshift army ready to challenge the might of the empire. The streets echoed with the tramp of boots and the distant rumble of cannon fire, a constant reminder of the fragile standoff. From her home in Braintree, Abigail Adams penned letters capturing the dread, the thunderous booms that shook the earth, a harbinger of the storm to come. On the British side, officers dismissed the encircling forces with aristocratic scorn, labelling them a low-born crowd of smugglers unfit to face disciplined ranks. But reinforcements were on the horizon, sailing aboard the HMS Cerberus, a vessel cutting through the Atlantic swells like a predator in pursuit. On May 25th, they arrived, Generals William Howe, Henry Clinton, and John Burgoyne, dubbed the Three Gamecocks for their fighting spirit and bold reputations. These were men forged in the fires of European wars, sent to crush the rebellion and restore order. As the ship docked amid the stifling heat, Burgoyne surveyed the besieged city and quipped with characteristic bravado, "Well, let us get in, and we'll soon find elbow room." Little did he know, the elbow room they sought would come at a bloody price on the slopes of Charlestown Peninsula. The arrival injected new vigour into the British command, but it also heightened the pressure cooker. Gage, now bolstered by these seasoned tacticians, plotted to break the siege. Howe, the tactical mind, Clinton, the strategist, Burgoyne, the flamboyant leader, they represented the empire's resolve to end this colonial insolence swiftly. Yet outside the city walls, the militia grew bolder, their entrenchments inching closer. The air was thick with anticipation, the humidity clinging like a shroud. Whispers of fortification plans circulated in the American camps, setting the stage for a midnight endeavour that would ignite the fuse. In this sweltering crucible, loyalties hardened, and the first sparks of a revolution were about to erupt into flame. The Battle of Bunker Hill loomed, a clash not just of arms, but of wills in the unforgiving New England summer. Midnight, the American forces ignited the spark that would erupt into flame. Colonel William Prescott, a veteran of the French and Indian War, led 1,200 men across the neck of Charlestown Peninsula, their tools muffled to evade British sentries in Boston below. Their orders: fortify Bunker Hill, the higher ground dominating the landscape, but in a fateful tactical error, one that would provoke the enemy into immediate action. Prescott and Engineer Colonel Richard Gridley chose Breed's Hill instead. Lower and closer to the British lines, it was a bold, provocative perch, jutting out like a defiant fist toward the harbour. The men, farmers and artisans turned soldiers, dug with frantic determination through the night. Shovels bit into the rocky soil, earth piled high in the humid darkness. By dawn, they had engineered a formidable redoubt, a square earthwork measuring 130 feet on each side, its walls rising 6 feet tall, reinforced with timbers and dirt. Breastworks extended from the redoubt, a hasty bulwark against the inevitable assault. The tension inside was palpable, whispers of doubt, the clink of tools, the strain of muscles aching from hours of toil. Exhaustion set in, but resolve held firm. These were men defending their homes, their liberties, against the world's greatest army. To the left, toward the Mystic River, Captain John Stark's New Hampshire troops extended the line. With ingenuity born of necessity, they constructed a rail fence defense, stones piled waist-high, stuffed with hay from nearby fields, forming an improvised barrier that stretched to the water's edge. It was a clever flank protection, turning open ground into a killing field for any advancing foe. As the first light of June 17th crept over the horizon, the British awoke to a shocking sight. From their vantage in Boston, telescopes revealed the overnight transformation, entrenchments crowning Breed's Hill, a direct challenge to their siege. General Gage and his Gamecocks, Howe, Clinton, Burgoyne, conferred in haste. Burgoyne, ever the dramatist, would later reflect on the audacity, but in that moment, the decision was clear. This insult must be crushed. The midnight shovel had set the stage for carnage. In the rising heat of the day, with temperatures climbing toward 80 degrees and beyond, the Americans waited in their redoubt, powder dry and nerves steeled as the British prepared to march. British assault began in earnest. General William Howe, commanding 2,400 to 3,000 regulars, launched his forces in a classic linear formation, shoulder to shoulder, 3 ranks deep, bayonets fixed and gleaming. Regiments like the 5th, 38th, 43rd, 52nd and 10th Foot advanced up the hill, their drums beating a relentless cadence through the waist-high grass. The men, elite soldiers of the Empire, staggered under their immense loads, packs digging into shoulders slick with perspiration, faces flushed from exhaustion in the sweltering sun. Each step was a labor, the heat sapping strength as they climbed toward the American redoubt. Inside the earthen walls, tension coiled like a spring. Colonel Prescott's militia, entrenched and resolute, gripped their muskets, peering over the parapets. The order echoed along the line, a shared battlefield command born of necessity. Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. Hold your powder, wait for the killing range of 30 to 50 yards. The Americans, a mix of farmers and volunteers, felt the oppressive humidity pressing down, their positions a cauldron of anticipation and fear. As the British lines closed, the first volley erupted, a thunderous crack that mowed down the front ranks like scythed wheat. Officers, resplendent in their gorgets and epaulets, fell first, targeted by marksmen who picked them off with deadly precision. On the left flank, British light infantry charged the rail fence, only to be decimated by Captain John Stark's New Hampshire men. Hidden behind stones and hay bales, the defenders poured fire into the advancing lines, turning the approach into a slaughter pen. Bodies piled up, the grass stained crimson as screams pierced the smoke-filled air. The linear tactics, so effective on European fields, faltered against the improvised defences. The rail fence held like an iron barrier, funneling attackers into kill zones where disciplined volleys shredded their formations. British troops wavered, then broke, retreating to the beach in disarray, leaving behind heaps of the fallen. Over 100 officers lay wounded or dead, their elaborate uniforms torn and bloodied. But Howe was undeterred. By 4:30 p.m., the second assault commenced. Learning from the carnage, the British shed their heavy packs, lightening their burden in the unrelenting heat. They shifted to column formations, narrower, faster-moving files aimed at breaching the redoubt. Up the hill they surged again, sweat streaming, breaths ragged as the sun beat down without mercy. Inside the American lines, ammunition dwindled perilously low. Defenders scavenged for scraps, loading muskets with nails, rocks, and bits of metal, anything to hurl at the oncoming tide. The air inside the redoubt thickened with gunpowder smoke and the acrid scent of fear, men shoulder to shoulder in the humid confines, their faces blackened and exhausted. Volleys crashed out once more, but the British pressed on, bayonets lowered, closing the gap through sheer grit and discipline. The assaults had transformed the hillside into a hellscape, the heat amplifying every agony, every cry. Yet the battle teetered on the edge, the Americans' resolve cracking under the strain as the Redcoats inched closer to the breach. As the second assault faltered but pressed relentlessly, the crisis deepened within the American redoubt. Ammunition, already scarce after hours of blistering exchanges, ran critically low. Defenders rummaged through pouches and barrels, scraping together final rounds, nails, bits of scrap metal, even rocks loaded into muskets in a desperate bid to hold the line. The air inside the earthworks was a stifling miasma of gunpowder, sweat, and fear, the humidity amplifying every gasp for breath as men peered over the 6-foot walls, their bodies slick and trembling from exhaustion. General Howe, his forces bloodied but unbroken, rallied the remnants of his regiments, the 5th, 38th, 43rd, 52nd, and 10th Foot, into tighter column formations, narrower spears aimed at piercing the defences. Without the crushing weight of their 60 to 125-pound packs, the British advanced with renewed vigour through the waist-high grass, now trampled and slick with the fallen. The heat bore down like a forge, sapping what little strength remained. but discipline held as they closed the final yards. The breach came swift and savage. As the last American volleys sputtered out, redcoats surged over the parapets, bayonets thrusting into the fray. Hand-to-hand combat erupted in the confined space, a brutal melee where muskets became clubs, swung with feral intensity. Men grappled in the dirt, the redoubt transforming into a cauldron of screams, clashing steel and choking smoke. The tension that had built through the day exploded in raw violence, bodies piling atop the earthen walls as defenders fought with whatever they could grasp. Fists, knives, broken barrels. In the heart of the maelstrom stood Dr. Joseph Warren, the charismatic patriot leader and newly commissioned Major General, who had joined the fight as a volunteer. Clad in civilian attire, he rallied the men with unyielding resolve, a symbol of the revolution's spirit. But as the British overran the position, a musket ball struck him down, a fatal shot to the head, turning him into an instant martyr. His death, amid the chaos, galvanized the retreating Americans, a poignant loss that would echo through the colonies. The redoubt fell, the rail-fence defences crumbling under the onslaught. Prescott's men, out of powder and overwhelmed, withdrew in ordered chaos toward Bunker Hill, leaving behind a field littered with the dead and dying. The breach had been won, but at a cost that blurred the line between victory and ruin. In the aftermath of the breach, silence descended like a shroud over the bloodied field, a bitter victory etched in the groans of the wounded and the pyres of the dead. The British, under General Howe, had seized the hill, but at a staggering cost. Casualties mounted to 1,054, 226 dead, 828 wounded, with over 100 officers fallen, their ranks decimated in the sweltering onslaught. Regiments like the 5th, 38th, 43rd, 52nd, and 10th Foot limped back to Boston, their linear formations shattered, the survivors haunted by the memory of packs discarded in the heat, bodies crumpling under withering fire. The Americans, retreating in good order to the mainland, tallied their losses at 450, 140 dead, 310 wounded. Yet in defeat, they found defiance. Their entrenched marksmen had proven the vulnerability of the vaunted thin red line, turning farmers into formidable foes. Inside the redoubt, the tension of the day dissolved into weary resolve, the physical toll of heat and exhaustion paling against the moral victory gained. This was no decisive triumph for the Empire. It was a Pyrrhic victory, one that bled the British dry. General Henry Clinton, surveying the carnage from afar, captured the irony in a letter. A few more such victories would have shortly put an end to British dominion in America. The slopes of Breed's Hill had become a graveyard of imperial hubris, the flames of burning Charlestown illuminating the harsh reality. The rebellion was no mere skirmish, but a war that could endure. The battle's shockwaves rippled through the revolution's trajectory. General Gage, once the enforcer of martial law, was recalled in disgrace, his siege broken not by defeat, but by the unsustainable price of victory. In his stead, command shifted, and soon George Washington would assume leadership of the Continental Army, forging the militia into a force capable of sustained resistance. The British, nursing their wounds in the humid confines of occupied Boston, awoke to a new truth. The colony's marksmen, behind earthworks and rail fences, could humble the mightiest army on earth. From this sweltering crucible emerged a transformed conflict, one where endurance trumped elegance, and the seeds of independence took root in the blood-soaked soil of Breed's Hill. As the smoke cleared from Breed's Hill, the echoes of that sweltering day in 1775 reverberated through history, shaping the birth of a nation. The Battle of Bunker Hill stands as a testament to the unyielding spirit of those who fought for freedom against overwhelming odds. If you've been gripped by this gritty tale of revolution and resilience, consider subscribing to our channel for more immersive dives into the Revolutionary War's pivotal moments. A like and share would help spread these stories far and wide, ensuring the lessons of the past endure. Thank you for joining us in this journey back to the fires in the Age of Revolution. Until next time, remember, in the heat of battle, courage is forged.